Okay, it's exactly 8:15. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Financial Fitness Masterclass. And the purpose of this class, just to remind us, is because we need three kinds of fitnesses to be very successful in the world, and especially even the world that we're living in today. The first fitness, if you remember, we said the spiritual fitness. And then when we say spiritual fitness, we're not talking about religion. We're just talking about how aligned you are with the purpose of God for your life. We're talking about how connected, how deeply connected to a personal mission you are. We're also talking about how you interpret your life and then the meaning that you assign to your life. Does your life make meaning? Do you feel very comfortable just being alone with yourself? Like someone said, the person you are going to spend the most time with on earth is yourself. So you really want to make sure that you are that kind of a person that you can, spend the rest of your life with. And also, we talked about physical fitness, okay? Because you might be spiritually fit, you might have, um, you might also be financially fit, but if you are not physically fit, you're going to have a very difficult experience here on earth. And then the third one, we're talking about financial fitness. So at any point of time, and this is something we should teach ourselves and also teach our children, we should not be so good at one and neglect the other. So there's spiritual fitness, there's physical fitness, and then there's financial fitness. And in continuing with that, we're going to look at strategic planning. And the reason that we are looking at planning today is that there's a whole lot of a very huge relationship between strategic planning and our financial fitness. There's a very huge relationship between planning and then financial well-being. And then I've seen in my work, working with literally thousands of people and then hundreds of businesses, that any individual or any company, any organization that is weak in strategic planning almost definitely has serious issues with their finances. It's the same thing for organizations. It is also the same thing in our individual lives. All right, so we'll look at that. But for a start, let's warm up. Let's find out who are in the room today. So please, as usual, type in the chat. Let's build this community. Just introduce yourself, your name, what you do, put it in the chat, your name, what you do, and then tell us, okay, in the chat, what action did you take within this week to move the needle for you, all right? Basically, like, what action did you take? It doesn't have to be something gigantic, maybe just one little action that you took. Based on all these insights we've been generating, we've been learning here, and based on your personal growth, how you have been growing, what action did you take this week to move your life forward a little bit? Okay, so please type in the chat. Type in the chat. And then others who are comfortable to speak, you can do that. You can unmute and speak. Introduce yourself in the chat and then tell us what action did you take to move your life forward, to just move the needle a little bit, to move you forward, even if it's one step. What action moved you one step? And the reason is, it's not about accumulating learning and knowledge. It's not about it. It's actually about taking action. And it's actually a waste of your time if you continue to join us here and then you're not taking action in any way. it's a waste of action for you, really. Sorry, a waste of time for you. But if you are learning and then the little things you're picking up and you are acting on it and getting results, that's what I want to hear. And that's what makes me happy to do this. Okay, so this might be at no cost to you, but it's at a huge, huge, huge cost to me, to do this, to set it up and then to do it freely and to do it happily every week. Okay, and it's a growing movement over time. I see us in not very distant future because this is something that will continue to show up every week across not just Nigeria, but Africa. And so it is important for me, helpful for me as well, that I see that you are taking action, that you are not the same person today who was here Saturday, just a Saturday ago. I really want it. That's what's going to give me the joy and the happiness to continue to do that. But if you're learning all these things and then picking these things in our meeting here, and then you are not acting on them, then I actually feel I'm wasting my time. Okay. Okay. Jibril, that's your first time here. Okay, let's do this so I'll be able to look at the chat. Clean up the table a little bit. Okay, keep it coming in the chat. Okay, very good. Excellent. So Simeon got his piggy bank, his savings box. Excellent. That's what I'm talking. That's the sort of thing I would like to hear. Okay. Amos, it's your first time here. Okay. Hello, Obi. Excellent. You've started keeping track of your spending. Excellent. I'm so happy to hear that, Obi. I'm so happy to hear that because we stressed this the last time. It's not what comes in, but it's how much of it you keep. It's what you let go out. Okay. Ken says, I'm an animator. Excellent. Actions I took to move me one step forward. So wake up at 5 a.m. every morning to work out. Excellent. Excellent. That's what I want to hear. That's what I want to hear. Okay. Walter says no sound. Is that coming from me? Is that correct? Can you all just do thumbs up if you can hear me? Or Walter, could that be coming from your own system? Can anybody just let me know if you can hear me? Just do a thumbs up. All right. Okay. All right. So you can hear me. So Walter, it might actually be your own system. Okay. Mayowa is a customer service representative. Okay. Working remotely. And this week I was able to finish reading a book on financial freedom for every youth. Excellent. Yes. Mayowa actually told me about it earlier. So he bought the book and it made you move forward to get yet another book. Okay. The one on stock investing. Excellent. Excellent. That's fantastic. I want to see people taking action. All right. One action, one movement, like somebody once said, one movement is worth more than 1,000 meditations. And I really think it's a very powerful quote. One move is worth more than 1,000 meditations. Okay. All right. So while others keep it coming. Hi, Esther. Good to have you here. Okay, Samuel says, Samuel is a teacher, all right? He has started keeping fit with regular exercise. Fantastic. And then also he's saving more intentionally, and he's also cutting down on unnecessary spending. Very good. These were the things that we talked about last week. So I'm glad people are actually taking action on that. Okay, fantastic. All right, Walter, glad that you can hear us very well right now. Okay, so let's get on with the business of today. And those joining us, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat and then tell us. All right, so we're looking at strategic planning for difficult times. And part of the reason I'm doing that, so this is something I do for a whole weekend, for organizations, for my business clients. But I have also discovered that we need to run our lives the way we run our companies. That good companies are run. And then it's not possible for any company to survive without the strategic planning activity. All right. And then difficult times because the world keeps changing. Nobody knew that waking up this morning, at least Israel did not know, waking up this morning, that the Palestinians will attack with such a barrage of force, like 5,000 missiles that they launched into Israel. They captured the borders, the border crossing, captured some Israeli soldiers. These were unthinkable. And the killing people in Israel. Israel's Iron Dome was overwhelmed by the number of rockets that were firing there. And all this while, the whole place was quiet. But then all of a sudden, this came. So we're going to look at how we apply strategic planning for our lives. And then to those who came in a bit later, we said that strategic planning is a very important process for financial fitness. It is impossible to be financially fit if you are not a good planner, because money and planning go hand in hand. They are second cousins. Money and planning go hand in hand. And this is why money is always flowing from the hand of a person who is very skilled in planning to the hand of the person who doesn't know how to plan. The same thing with companies. Organizations that plan better actually earn better. I remember when I was in Shell, every time, the same thing happened when I joined Chevron. The company always had what they call the 5-year strategic business goals. They always had 5 years of strategy. But beyond the 5 years of strategy, there was a vision that transcended even 100 years. And then there was a general picture of where the company was going to be in 10 years and 25 years. And in fact, Shell developed something that they call scenario planning. So before anything happens, they have come up with 20 different scenarios, such that no matter what happens, there's already a contingency plan for whatever it is. The same way we need to plan our lives. So the other reason is I find that this belief system is very, very strong among many of our people. The sera belief system. And I hear people sing that song with a lot of conviction, but it's not every song that you sing. I know the melody sounds very good. Sera. And people, also I was somewhere, and during the cocktail, a couple of months ago, they had this beautiful singer, this beautiful singer who was singing Sera. He was so emotional. The mood was perfect and people were dancing to it. But I think for me, that's like one of the most toxic songs anybody can ever sing. And then for some of you who know the song, it's a little girl who asked the mother a question or some questions. He said, when I grow up, will I be pretty? Will I be rich? Okay. She said, when I was just a little girl, I asked my mother, what will I be? Will I be pretty? Will I be rich? And then she said, here is what my mother said. Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. The future is not ours to see. That is a horrible song. Forgive me, but I think that song just came from the pit of hell. Whatever will be, will be. Therefore, just don't worry. That's a dangerous thing. And then some people even have this fatalism. And something happens, like a friend whose baby, 2-year-old baby boy, so drowned in a bucket. drowned in a bucket, just died. And then somebody will now say, sera, sera. And some people will even say, oh, that was the will of God. It's terrible. So many things that we accuse God of. But could that thing have been avoided? Yes. I was listening to a pilot recently, and then they said they were having a conversation, and they said, the pilot said that 95% of all air accidents, all the plane crashes and everything, he said that they will not tell you outside, but that within them, they know that 95% of all the air crashes were preventable. So it's the same thing. That's why this belief system, if you have this belief system and you are in this room, you need to cure yourself of it. Don't bother going into all the theology and all the arguments. This is terrible. Whatever will be, will be. No, that's not the way God made us. If that was the way God made us, then that would be very, very unjust for him to expect us to, exercise our free will, because we are made with the power to choose. We are made with free will. That's why he said, God himself said, I set before you life and death. And he said, but choose life. But so when you make choices that bring certain things, or even somebody else makes the choices on your behalf that bring certain things into your experience, you don't start saying, sera, sera. And then before I leave the slide, let me also talk about personal experience. I finished my youth service in 1989 in Maiduguri. And then I came to Lagos to look for a job. And then, of course, in Lagos, I had no place to stay. So I was squatting with traders from my village in one dingy room in a place called Makoko. How many of you actually know Makoko? Just type yes in the chat. How many of you know Makoko? Anybody, or you've heard about Makoko? You know Makoko in Lagos? Just type yes in the chat. Type yes or type Makoko in the chat. Okay. All right. So people have heard about Makoko. Now, that Makoko is a slum. It's still it's a slum, but even the Makoko that you have today, it's like a city compared to the Makoko of the 1980s when I was staying there. And then every day I would leave the house, trek around the streets of Lagos, and I still remember that one shoe I had at the time. And then the sole of the shoe was caught in the middle. Makoko was dirty. So whenever it rained in Lagos, the water would seep through that crack in my and come into my stockings. And then by the time I got it was smelly, it was horrible. That was my life. And then somebody would come and meet me in that state and say, sera, sera. But I refused. That was, I refused. Sera wasn't sera anything. So for almost 2 years, trekking around the whole place, I didn't whatever. I told myself, I said, God forbid, this Makoko wasn't my destiny. So even though I was there, my body would be in Makoko, but my mind, my imagination, I saw myself traveling around the world, working, speaking in America, in Europe. As at that time, I had not traveled anywhere. And I would see myself traveling around Africa, Asia, United States, North America, in those days, from that dingy room. But in my imagination, that experience was so real to me. And as I was doing that, even though I was hungry, even though I couldn't get a job for almost 2 years, I embarked upon a very, very aggressive personal development. The first book I read then was John Maxwell's book, which I will encourage everybody to read if you haven't read it, or at least encourage your children to read it. But that was a book that started me off on this journey. That book is Be All You Can Be. And then after that, the second book I read by John Maxwell was Your Attitude, Key to Success. Things started changing. So fast forward a couple of years later, I'm working in what many Nigerians at the time, and probably now still consider like the top job in the country, top employer in the country, working with Shell. And then I had hardly worked with Shell 2 years, and Chevron came, almost tripled what Shell was giving me. And I went to Chevron, and then I worked with Chevron 6 years, and then Shell came back, doubled what Chevron was paying, and all that. My goodness. And I look at all these experiences I've had teaching in Stanford Graduate School of Business, the Stanford C program, teaching classes at Lagos Business School. I look at all these things, and then I flash back to Makoko. That's when somebody would have told me that que sera, sera. And if I'd accepted that, I would be in Makoko today, and you will not be listening to me here. We wouldn't be on this Zoom call. Therefore, whatever your arguments are, just for the purpose of moving your life forward, kill this belief system. Que sera isn't sera. And stop singing that song in your head. Whatever will be, will. That's not the way it works. You can change circumstances. You can change things. You can actually change your future by the decisions you're making today. So when we started, some of you said you have started saving intentionally. You have also started exercising intentionally. That's what some of you put in the chat. Now you're changing. You've completely rearranged your future. With your daily exercise, you find that when you're in your 50s like myself, or you're in your 60s, your mobility will still be good. So you change the future by the decision you made today to start exercising. You've changed the future. You've started changing the future by the decision you made to start saving and not to consume or spend everything that you are earning. So que sera isn't sera. Don't sing that song. Now, how many of you know this gentleman? Before I mention his name, I kind of love this man. He's one of my heroes, even though he wasn't African. But I think he embodied a lot of what leadership is, to me. So I like him a lot. Anybody know who this man is? The man on the slide? Yes, Abraham Lincoln. Okay, Abraham Lincoln. That's correct. First answer was correct. So Abraham Lincoln said, we must plan for the future, because people who stay in the present will remain in the past. Think about that. We must plan for the future, because the people who stay in the present will remain in the past. So anytime you're not planning for the future, ladies and gentlemen, you are still in the past. This is why every new year, people make so-called New Year resolution, but they stay in the same habit. And so 2024 will be exactly like 2023, will be exactly like 2022, will be exactly like 2017. Look around you. Look around you. You find people who, what they are dealing with in 2023 was exactly what they dealt with in 2019. They struggled to pay rent in 2015. They struggled to pay rent in 2016, 2017, 2018. Now it is 2023. They are still struggling to pay rent. Something is not right. It's not meant to be like that. That is 7 years dealing with one problem. And I tell you, 7 years is enough to solve any single problem. Whether it is your health, whether it is your spirituality, whether it is your business, 7 years is enough to solve a particular problem. So if you're having the same problem, can you imagine taking the house rent thing, for instance? I've read stories recently of people who sat down and said, okay, my house rent is 1.2 million naira, for instance. And they said they divided 1.2 million by 365 days. I've read at least 2 young ladies say that within a space of 1 week. And then it came out to a certain amount of money a day. And then this lady said she now took that money. So it came to like 3,000 naira. This particular person I was reading said that her rent came up to like 3,000 naira a day. So she had an account where she now puts that thing. She doesn't touch it. She doesn't have ATM to it. And whenever her rent is due, she pays. Another person said he uses an app that locks her savings until a particular day. 7 years is enough to solve any particular challenge. But we are still living in the past, still dealing with the same challenges because we never plan for the future. Therefore, the problems of the past become our reality in the present, and they keep haunting us. So what this gentleman is telling us, therefore, is that one certain strategy for dealing with the future is planning. Okay. Many of us saw this in the news. About 2 years ago or so, there was a time, like almost every week, you hear about a collapsed building in Nigeria. Almost every week, you hear about a building collapsing. Type in the chat, what do you see here? Why do you think that this building collapsed? Type in the chat. And many of us, of course, heard the famous one that happened in Ikoyi that killed a couple of people. And then it was like a 22-story house that came crashing. Type in the chat. What do you think caused what you're seeing? All right, so let me look at the chart. Okay, so no good planning. Calista says no good planning. Improper foundation, structural deficiency, faulty foundation, weak foundation, greed. Okay, keep it coming. Why do you think what happened there happened? Lack of compliance monitoring. Okay. What else? Okay, improper planning, lack of planning, inferior materials. Okay. Sera. Wrong foundation, and Marachi says failed planning, corruption, does it says. All right. Bad management, poor materials. What is common? What is common to all these things that you have said here? There are some things I see. What are the common things from all that you have? Okay. Not following the agreed plan, bad management. Okay, so for everything you've put here, I think what is common, greed, corruption, impunity, negligence. So what is common here is character failure. So whether you're talking about the foundation or negligence or not paying, it's just character failure. Negligence is also character problem. Impunity, greed, corruption, planning. Okay. And then what's also common is the lack of structural integrity. So whether you're talking about the foundation, or you're talking about the materials, or you're talking about compliance and all that, this is a structural problem. It lacks structural integrity. And it's the same thing with our lives. Okay? It's the same thing with our lives, because our lives are like a building as well. So the same things that made this building collapse is the same thing that makes our lives to fail. Character flaws. Please type in the chat. Look around you. Think about people around you. Think about human beings who have fallen. What are the common character flaws that make people fall or fail? Type in the chat. What kind of character flaws do you see that easily make people fail? Okay, procrastination, true. Very good. Okay, fear of failure, lust, laziness, lack of integrity. Yeah, keep going. These are character flaws. Selfishness, lack of integrity, greed, pride. Absolutely. Lack of preparedness, lack of preparation, lack of vision. Wrong belief. Fantastic. Low self-esteem. Just look at the chart. We know why we fail. And you see, it's the same thing that makes us crash financially. So whether you're talking about our spirituality, look at the list you have there, or you're talking about our physical health, or you're talking about our finances, everything you put here, they all apply. Lack of planning, wrong mindset, wrong believing, greed, corruption, all these things also destroy our money. You know, I went somewhere with somebody who did some work for me today. Okay, so let me not give too much detail. Person could also be in this group now. And then I got telling him a story about my experience, with the working for the Nigerian government, and why I just gave up. So on one occasion, a state governor asked me to come do some work for the state. And so the commissioner got in touch with me because he was the one executing and then planning it. So in the planning, that work was supposed to go through 5 phases. And I was going to be paid for each of the phases. So I flew into the state capital, did that first phase. Then the commissioner came to my room. The bag of money, I was insisting. I told them to make transfer, but they refused. He just came with, a bag of cash to pay cash. I flew back to Lagos same day. And that evening, I had hardly settled down to like have dinner or something, when this man now calls me, the commissioner calls me, and then he says, Ogbo, please, when you send your invoice, I would like you to do something small, a little favor for me. When you send your invoice, please, can you leave some blank lines that we have just 1 or 2 things to. It sounded strange, So, and I said to him, Mr. Commissioner, I didn't even let him finish. I said to him, no, I'm going to give you a receipt, and I'm going to put in that receipt exactly what you paid me. That was it. So I sent them a receipt of exactly what they paid me. And then that was the end of the project. They never called me back. And so even though it was for the benefit of the state that we complete those other 4 phases, but because I refused to play ball, he killed it. And the guy was saying, well, that's the way Nigeria works and things like that. And so you have to, that you have to keep conscience one side, and then this is business and this is conscience, that you're still listening to your conscience. I said to him, well, the thing is, yeah, he canceled the project, but I sleep well at night. And so people do these things. They say, well, that's the way everybody does it. And so you go, the politicians give you something to do. You quoted 30 million. And then they send 300 million to your account. Then you take your 30 million and then give them 270. And then you can sleep well at night, because everybody says that that's the way it's done. But you look at people who make money. There's actually a scripture that I think I would like to share. I hope I remember to look it up. But it says something like a partridge that sits on eggs that it didn't hatch or something like that. So it's a person who obtains riches from dishonest means. Please, if you know that quote, put it in the chat. Just find it and put it in the chat. I think it was Jeremiah that said it. So, lack of planning, lack of ethics, all these things, lack of integrity, they are why people do not do well financially. So sometimes you find people, they flourish all of a sudden. They are building houses in the village. They are buying new cars. They are traveling with their family to Dubai. They are showing all kinds of whatever. All of a sudden, they have this instant whatever all over the place. But Type in the chat if you've known someone like that in your village who displayed such ostentation. But then now, 7 years, 10 years, 15 years after, that man who was once the richest person spraying money in the village is trekking along the road, asking people for money to feed. Please, if you've ever heard about something like that, or you know somebody like that, just type in the chat, I know. Type in the chat, I know. If what I've just said, you've seen someone who all of a sudden made so much money, all of a sudden built houses, did all kinds of things, was all over the place, was the party guy in town, the guy to go. Okay, so let me look at the chat. If you've ever seen this sort of a thing, or you know a character like that, just type I know in the chat. Because you see, when we talk about financial fitness, we're not just talking about making it's all inclusive. Yeah, look at the chat. Yeah, I know. Look at the chat. Look at the chat. Yeah, people like that. I know quite a number of them. They were big names in town, but they made their money in very questionable means without integrity. And then it caught up with them. Years after, it catches up with them. And then if there's a police officer in this group, or you know a police officer, help me beg them. You see, I tell some of them who will listen. You see, this thing, you stand by the road. You see, because this conversation is around financial fitness. You stand by the road. You're harassing these Okada people, the Keke people, collecting money from them. These bosses collecting money, doing just contriving all kinds of things against motorists to take money, from them. And people are giving you this money that you're extorting from them. And you go back with this kind of a money, this money that you make like that. You use it to build a house that you're putting your family. You use it to buy food. You use that money to feed your children. Money gotten like that from curses. And you use it to do all these things. Life doesn't square up like that. So you look at them, I'm sure they are successful policemen, but you look at all them around and you look at their families, look at them, look at how they turn out. Because money is a spirit. So making it is important that you make money in the right way, with integrity, with hands like this. That money, because there are still very honest people in the country, honest business people who will not do wrong, and they're making money. So your financial fitness should include integrity and planning. Okay, so we're talking about planning, but we're also talking about integrity. Okay, now let's talk about the nature of planning. When we finish this, I'll just do 1 or 2 more slides. Then we can receive contributions and questions like we normally do from the house. So as I'm speaking, if you remember something or you get some insight you would like to share, or some personal experience or something else that can enrich us in the room, just get ready to share shortly after this. So how do you plan? How do you bring it to pass? How do you become a planner? Somebody who plans. Okay, because becoming wealthy requires a lot of planning. You have to plan the income source. You have to plan the expenditure. You have to plan, okay, in 10 years, I want to be worth a certain net worth. What's the plan? How do I get there from today? You don't just wake up and jump into the wealth. So now, if you look at the graph I'm showing you up here, you have on the x-axis, you have time. And on the y-axis, you have status. So T1 talks about your current status. So planning actually involves 3 things. It involves 3 steps, if you like. So the first step is actually knowing your current status. And then you're planning because you want to go from your current status to the desired status. You can see that desired status, the highest, that's where you desire to be. But your current is where your current status is where you are right now. And in this current status, you're finding it difficult to meet your obligations. You're finding it very difficult to pay rent. You don't own your own house. You're finding it very difficult to cater for the health of your family. You're finding it very difficult, general. That's the current status. But your desired status is where you have a sense of ownership, where you have financial peace, a measure of peace of mind, where you are certain, for instance, that no matter what happens in the environment and no matter what happens in the economy, you are stable, not just for this generation, but for the generation after you. That's your desired status. Now, to go from your current status where you are to that desired status, planning is required, because the only way you can get there is not by luck. It's not by accident. I know people say a lot about luck, but how one person summarized the subject of luck is that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And I think that's a very acceptable definition of, and if you define luck that way, then I believe indeed that luck works. But you don't just wake up in your current status and then you find yourself overnight in your desired status, even if you win a lottery. Planning is required to get you from T1 to T2. So now the gap where you need to do the planning is the gap between this, your current status, and your desired status. And this is why now, where these questions, 2 questions I'm going to give you that I'd like you to write down and use it in your journal. And by the time we come back next Saturday, I would like to see how you did this exercise and what the outcomes were. So make sure you understand this graph I'm showing you. That's what I use for the businesses I coach. That's what I use for them. Make sure you understand this. Okay, now 2 questions. It's actually 1 question, like 1 coin, but it has 2 sides that can help you to now deal with this gap. So the first one is, how do I move my life forward? What steps do I need to take to move my life forward? Okay, so I can actually add that one here. What steps do I need to take right now to move my life forward? Okay, so I want you to screenshot this question. This is probably the most important question and it's not just a one-time question. It's something that you need to constantly ask. So many times I wake up in the day and I'm asking myself, what steps do I need to take today to move my life forward? Today, as of right now, not the one of tomorrow, to move my life forward. Okay, so a very important question in planning is, how do I move my life forward? How do I move my life forward? Because if you are old enough, you would have discovered by now that if you don't move it forward, nobody's moving it forward for you. I hope you've discovered that. I hope you know that. If you don't move it, because it is extremely difficult to help somebody who doesn't even want to help himself. And that's a frustration I've had with, working with the poor. That's the frustration I have with them, because many of them are just comfortable being where they are, just receiving handouts. They do not want to put effort. And then it's not once or twice I've seen beggars in the street. Somebody comes and tells this beggar, come and do some work for me and I'll pay you money. Come, become my gardener. Come, start doing something for me and I'll be paying you monthly. And they refuse. So it's very difficult to help someone who doesn't have a vision for their own life. The second question is, how do I manage the unthinkable? So as you're moving your life forward, certain things happen that you didn't plan for. Certain things happen like I told you guys about the airplane, the Dana crash. I was in that manifest. That would have been unthinkable because I wasn't expecting to die at the time. But for many people, death is unthinkable. Okay, when my mother died, it was an unthinkable thing for me. And perhaps if I had actually navigated to say, how do I manage the unthinkable? And then in my unthinkable list, I put there the loss of my mother. It would have been easier for me than what I went through. after my mother passed on. It was unthinkable. She was only 63 going to 64. It was unthinkable. I was still thinking about a 90-year-old mom whom I would spend so many decades with, especially because my dad had gone about 7 years before that time. So the unthinkable. Suppose you lose your job. Suppose your business failed. Suppose, you lose a loved one at a time you were not planning. So like I said, it's two sides of one coin. One is saying, how do I move my life forward? What do I do? What steps do I take to move my life forward? And the other one is saying, how do I manage the unthinkable? The things I didn't plan for in the journey from this T1 to T2. How do I manage the unthinkable? So it's all part of the planning. So within that planning required, you're talking about how do I move my life forward? How do I move from T1 to T2? And then you're also asking, between T1 to T2, things will happen that I didn't plan. Because it's one thing to have your plan, but also things that you didn't plan for happen. Okay? Israel did not plan to be attacked today, like massively attacked today. And so many things happened. So within that planning gap, you are now saying, how do I manage the unthinkable? How do I manage the things that happen? All right, so that's where we're going to stop. And so I would like to take more insights, more contributions, and then questions on any subjects that we've talked about today. And then we'll take it on from there. All right. So just put up your hand if you have a contribution. Okay, Ngozi's hand is up. Please unmute and speak. Yeah, Ngozi, please unmute yourself and speak.
Thank you for the opportunity. How do I manage the unthinkable? One of the things that you are just referred to was one of the partridge in the first place. The partridge, the bird, is written there in Jeremiah 17:11 that the partridge will go and stay on top of egg that he didn't lay, and it's a waste of time. And that it is the same way for wealth you didn't work for, that it will leave you in the middle of life. So sometimes it's not that it was like the partridge that didn't lay the eggs. It's just that other circumstances happen and the same thing happened. So how do I manage the unthinkable? The character you built before that time is what will sustain you through that. Because there are so many uncertainties, As for what happened in Israel today, it's written in scripture that when they say peace, peace, and then comes sudden destruction. So the way they had been vigilant over the years, it looks now like there's been peace, where even Palestinians are part of their what do they call it? Their council that rose. So the character. One thing we've been stressing in this class that you mentioned is that attitude of both integrity and saving and planning. If you already have that, not that you won't be hurt by whatever happens, but it is you have both the tenacity and the resilience to come out of it. It might take time, but you'll be able to, and that's something that I find missing in many younger generation now because of the music you're talking about, the sera. Those were not how we were raised. We were raised to know that you can take yourself from point A to point B. There is their sera, things that are sera. There are. Because the Lord who has given us gifts and skills, gifts and it says in Ephesians chapter 2:10 that the work he had prepared for us from the beginning to do. There are books written for us that we must fulfill. But he also gave us free will. So there's a way that you can use the free will and bring sera to your favor and the favor of your generation.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ngozi. Thank you. Okay, Amarachi, please unmute. See your hand up.
Okay, mine is actually a question like tonight is for me. I don't even know how I saw this. I'm just kidding, and everything that has been said from the beginning has just been what I personally have been battling with for the past 1 week. But then, aside from that, let's say in a situation where it's a journey, and I was telling someone today that all our processes are different. That's why we work with the Spirit of God. But at the same time, in all the planning, sometimes they tell you in business that people that actually have money are people that understand the world of investment, and money bets money the same way that you sow and reap and understand those things, that you have to keep some savings. But let's say that God, I have so many things on my mind to say, but let me just do this with it. Is it financially wise, okay, on the note that you do have a business, then let's say in a year plan of the business, in a year, within the year life, 1 year lifespan of the business, it's another source completely of the business that is giving money. Then the one you might even have put like, let's say, 10 million into hasn't even yielded up to 200,000 in a whole year. And it's even the one that is least, like the one that is least, has the least cost, that actually gives you like double that amount. But then you spend literally 10 million you make from the least cost into that particular place. I'm asking a question. I'm kind of facing that particular challenge right now. But then, you've already spent like this 10 years amount, you spent literally a whole lot of time making it, and then you spent it in building a particular infrastructure that is not even yielding 0.01%, of everything. I'm asking, what's the best what's the best approach to this? How does someone if also has a particular issue and the friend says that the Spirit of God is telling him to leave that location to a completely different location and then enhance the other business that he's not so much, putting in so much, because person has no peace currently, because I don't know. But just a year ago, the person thought that okay, that was it, that was what he was supposed to be doing, and then, but then he planned the best he could. He put in all kind of effort, like all energy and sweat. But then, unfortunately, the one he put in the most money is the one that yielded. In fact, he has been a burden. So I'm just asking, the person taking a different path to like a different city that he feels is being led by the Spirit, just to start out with the other one that makes more and it's even much less in terms of, investment.
Okay. All right.
What's the financial advice?
Okay. Obi, is your hand up to answer this or a different thing? Do you want to speak to what Amarachi is saying, or you have a different?
Slightly different, sir.
Okay, so let's handle her own and then. All right. Does anyone here want to speak to what Amarachi has shared? Okay. Strategic planning is not always a guarantee, but it always enhances your chances of succeeding much more than if you don't plan for it. Secondly, I teach my clients that a strategy is not a fixed target. Because if you run a strategy like a fixed target, you are going to suffer a lot of pain. But strategy is not a fixed target. I teach my students to look at strategy as a hypothesis. Every strategy is a hypothesis. You are still human. There's still a number of unknowns, even as you're planning. So when you have a plan, don't treat it like it's something cast in stone. Even when God gives you a vision, Moses already knew before he killed those people. He already knew that that was God's plan for him. But I think he went in too soon and then killed people and then didn't come back to it until 40 years after. Then again, that God reveals something to you, that something fails. does not mean that God didn't reveal it. Because many times what we call failure isn't really failure. Okay, so the example I gave last time we met, I went to Enugu, spent millions of naira, and then set up a juice bar, fresh juice and smoothies and all that bar. Spent a lot of money there, washed up the place and things like that. And so we started operation I think it was like January. By the first week of May, that business was dead. In fact, by April, it was sucking so much money that we knew that there was no way we were going to set up with this business. But I had the dream. I believe I was led. And then the painful thing was, it was a lot of money. We had just done a project, for a company, and then that paid us a lot of money. And so I had a choice between, should I use this money to pay school fee backlogs I had, or should I go and start something that can yield money and then we can use it to pay the school fee? 5 months later, the business is dead. All the money was gone. And then the school fees still accumulated. They were not paid. Now, isn't that a failure? Yes, you think it's a failure. And did God send me to go and start that business? Of course, I heard from him because I'm led by him. He sent me to go there. Now, let me tell you what happened while I was there in Enugu. So we used to hold like a weekly or a bi-monthly or something, like every week or something. We used to hold something like this I'm doing now because I really love doing this, to interact with the neighbors and the people and customers there, So we talk about their health, we talk about the juices and the different things and what they do. Now, on one occasion, I was in the office, and then this young girl turns up. I think she was 20. Sita, do you remember? Was it 21 or 22 at the time? Like a 21-year-old. She walked in that she wanted to see me. I had no idea who she was, never met her from Adam. She just walked in that she wanted to see me. It was strange. It wasn't that she wanted to buy something. Anyway, so I said, what is it? She said she would like to see me in private. I said, do you want us to talk or do we go into the whatever? So we went in. Well, long story cut short, this girl got pregnant out of wedlock. This little girl got pregnant out of wedlock. She was really pregnant. And then at that time, her father, who was a factory hand, very, very poor people, people struggling with money. So the man was a factory hand, hadn't even come home for years because he couldn't afford to come home. The mother and then her sisters and all the other people were just living in one room there that had no furniture or something. And then she gets pregnant. So the father from where she was says, I do not want to see her. I do not want, of course, the mother, everybody. So she was literally, pushed out. This is a long story, but let me cut it short. So we now had to prepare a portion because where we rented like a whole flat, so a couple of rooms. We were not using all of them, and it was really big. So we now prepared a place, a room for her to stay until she was due to have a baby. I called a couple of people, friends of mine, and because I don't even remember if I mentioned her to you. I'll be surprised if you didn't know about this. So I told a couple of friends. There was even a lady in America, a friend of mine, Claudia Erickson, who said that she could adopt this baby because what they were telling this girl, the alternative they were giving her, her family was saying that she should go. That was the first time I learned about baby factory. I only heard it. I never knew it existed. But then they told this girl that she should go there. That was the advice they were given. And then her pastor, her mother, were telling her, go to that baby factory, go there, have your baby. They will pay you. They said if it was a boy at the time, it was 350,000 that they will pay her and take the baby. If it was a girl, 300,000 naira. I could not believe it. So when I mentioned to my friend, Claudia Erickson, she said she doesn't mind adopting the child and bringing her to the US. Anyway, so I found myself, I went there to do business. I found myself in this drama. So we prepared things, bought some friends, also bought things. She had a baby and all that. Well, happy to announce to you that this baby is alive today. I think she turned either 5 or 6 this year. She's alive, bubbling, alive. So one day, I was brooding over my lost business. Long after this, a little while after this, I was brooding over my lost business. So much money. Now I had these school fees that not pay. Now this money is gone. I was brooding over it, and then God quietly came. He said to me, well, I sent you to Enugu. I saw ahead of time about this child, that this child, every child is precious to him. He hates children being aborted. He hates them being trafficked. He hates them. And he said, all that move from Lagos to Enugu, all that move, because I had to rent a place in Enugu and rented a place for this shop. Spent so much money. He said all of it was to save a baby. How could you in the world? So was that a loss? And I don't know how God writes his own drama, how he writes his story. It's crazy, because me, I would have done it differently. But that he sent me, he told me that it wasn't business he sent me for. It was for that child, that to save that baby. He had heard. No, of course he knows everything ahead of time. And he just positioned me. This girl, strange woman, strange girl from nowhere, just came, So was that a business fail? No, it was not. So that something failed does not mean that God didn't tell you. Now, having said that, Solomon also had a strategy. He said, in the morning, you should sow your seed. And then in the evening, you should not withhold your hand. And he said, because you do not know which one will prosper, whether it is this one or the other. So in strategy, you don't take a business idea or a business strategy as cast in stone. You take it as a hypothesis. Hypothesis means that you are testing it. You are testing the strategy. And so midway things come in, and then you can now factor in all those things and then redirect the strategy. Secondly, when you want to test a business, like the one is making money, which wasn't even the one you invested a lot of interest in, and then the other one you're making money, you also have to run that business, the one that's not making money, you've invested so much in, you have to run it through a set of criteria. What's the mission? What's the vision? You have to really find out, because you need to know, is it time to let go? Is it time to let go? Because often there's a psychological, what we call, is it sunk cost or something like that, because we've spent so much in the business that we feel attached to it, like the baby we have given birth to, that we don't know when to let go. But you should never be attached to business. Only be attached to the customer. And then when you look at it that way, it makes it very simple. Is this business still serving the customer? Is it still providing value? Is it solving problems? Or am I just burning cash there? So, and a lot of other things you have to think. What about the other businesses in that industry? What is their typical life cycle? What is their profitability? Are they also struggling with the same thing I'm struggling in this business? If there are some of them that are doing very well in that space, in that sector, what are they doing that I'm not doing? So a whole lot of, business process re-engineering and all that can come in. But basically the short answer, because business strategy is something I do over a whole weekend and then 3 days, we can't exhaust it here. But I hope you have found, Amarachi, something that you can, take out, from it. Yeah, so you have to look at that business, and don't be attached to any business at all. If any business is no longer fulfilling its purpose and then is not showing promise for the future, and then you are sure it is not because of your own limitations, because many times the biggest problem that the entrepreneur has is actually his own head. The biggest problem of our business is because our businesses cannot grow beyond our heads. So sometimes you need to get a coach to come in, a second eye to look at that business, to actually see, why is this business not working well? Because if you are in it and trying to solve the problem, you're so used to the business already that you can't even see a different side of it. Oh, I hope that has helped for now. Okay, Obi, let's take it first. Okay.
Good evening. Thank you very much. In the two questions that you posed, how do I move my life forward and how do I manage the unthinkable? One of the things that comes to mind is how we set some kind of goals or targets for business ideas. And what sometimes we encounter is the disillusionment of plans not succeeding. I think you've answered me partly by your response to the previous speaker, not to be fixated. The challenge is that sometimes our formal education, our professions, or the way we're brought up tends to keep us very rigid in our thinking. So there's this input and this expected output. And so when that does not happen, we feel that it's a failure. So the question really is, how do we re-engineer our minds to be business-minded when, basically, how can we re-engineer our minds to be flexible in the business environment when our plans once or twice have failed in the past? So it's more a question, you've sort of said we should be flexible, but sometimes the cost of failure looks so high to us, and how do we re-engineer our mind to be successful in business? That's basically a question.
And that's, to me, that's actually the number one business problem. Is here. Because the business can never be bigger than the mind of the business leader. It's not possible. If you go to my LinkedIn profile and you read the last paragraph, I talked about one thing that I found very, very interesting, because I've worked with businesses in South Africa through the Stanford Seed program, businesses in Zimbabwe, businesses in Botswana, businesses in Sierra Leone, different countries. And I have found out in every case. And then, of course, the businesses in Nigeria that I have taught, through programs that I've had, either through SAPES or LBS and all, hundreds of them. This is one common denominator I've found that, and your question touches on it. Write this down. No business, including your own here, no business can exceed, including my own business, no business can exceed the quality, the competence of its leadership. So the ultimate limiting factor to my business, the ultimate limiting factor to your business is what you know, is your competence, is here. This is why coaching is so powerful. I have spent more on coaching, others coaching me, than I've spent on anything else. Because a trained coach sees what you don't see. When I'm coaching, when I'm doing private coaching, it always amazes me. Like one of my clients, this year, it amazed me. This is fantastic woman and entrepreneur. Fantastic. And what she has done, and I can tell you for a fact that 95% of women in business in Nigeria have not done what she's done. But this wonderful woman was still having some imposter syndrome issues. And then when we now sit to talk, I find that the problem was not really the business itself, but the way she was thinking about the business. And so that's not the sort of thing that you remove by just reading books. It can help. So how do you re-engineer your mindset? Because that's really where it starts. Join a mastermind. A mastermind is like this thing I'm doing here. Okay, just reminds me about the parable of the king who did a dinner, because all those things that Jesus talked about, we think it is far-fetched, but it's happening. It's not once or twice. I set up something like, look at what you're hearing today. Is this valuable? Is this helpful to you? And it's free and it's here. But where are the people? And I talk about it every time on the social media handles. And then a lot of people are saying, they're saying all kinds of things and all that. The meal is set, but how many people are eating it? So a mastermind is important because you need to find yourself in the environment of entrepreneurs. Mastermind affects mindset affects mindset. So you need to upgrade your mindset by being around people. And you find that when you are in a community, an environment like this, chances of finding one or two people who are going through exactly the same thing that you're going through are very high. And chances of having someone who said, oh, I went through this thing in my business and this is how I resolved it, very, very high. So that is one. Of course, reading is helpful, which also leads me to Mayowa's question in the chat about resources. Mayo, I would like you to unmute and then talk about, because the resources you are going to need will be determined by your goal. Like, where do you see yourself? What are you trying to accomplish? And then I might be able to give you some helpful resources. So once I finish with this, Mayo, you can unmute and then, just tell us, like, what are you trying to accomplish? What's the big deal? What's the big deal? Where do you see yourself in another 10 years? Then I'll be able to suggest resources that can help you. But I hope that helps, a little bit, because that mindset thing is everything. So be around people. If you can't be there physically, at least virtually, forums, where people are, they have that growth mindset. Because the problem is not the business. If there's a business you're doing and it is not doing well, but somebody else is doing it and is doing very, very well, and the person is playing by the book, not doing things unethical, then it means that the problem is not the business. The problem is you. Okay, and that's why I emphasize leadership a lot. By next week, we'll announce every year we normally have our leaders retreat because of this same reason, where we go to talk about leadership, because a business cannot outgrow its leadership. So that will help. If you can, please get a coach. Please get a coach if you can. I have to decline this. All right, get a coach if you can. One of the best things I've done for myself is to pay to learn. It is to pay to learn. I do it even up till now. There's one I'm doing recently. Somebody has done something. Okay, and I think I've shared that experience here, a couple of times. This guy is very good in e-commerce. And I call him up. I say, listen, I don't have 5 years to learn to do what you're doing. How much do I pay you for 1 hour of your time to do this with me? And the guy quoted the amount of money. God is my witness. I did not price it, because that's the thing. I would like the professional. The guy has a skill. He's professional. And I don't want him to start thinking, whatever. He said it. I said, send me your account. I wired the money to that guy. And then we spent that 1 hour, 2 hours together and did that thing together. And do you know that was the very first time in all my years in business that I was able to actually make money in an automated way online? I've hired him again, paying him money. And I said, listen, I don't have 2 years to come and start learning all these things, do website, do landing pages, do all these things, do Facebook. I don't have that time. That's not what I should be doing at this time. I should be at the strategic level, thinking about the vision. Where am I taking the business to? Not learning to do PHP and learning to do website. And then I said, how much? He told me. I've paid him 1/3 of the money. And I said, okay, I'll pay in 3 installments. Pay to play. Because until you start paying to play, you will never leave a certain stage. You will never leave a certain stage, of your business. So, and that's a secret that many people in Africa, we just don't, we're not just very much aware of. I hope that helps anyway. So, because before I come back to you, please, let's hear Mayowa. Mayowa in the chat said he was looking for further resources. Yeah, just let me know what.
Sorry, mine is a question on what you're saying. You said imposter syndrome. I wanted to understand it or have an example.
Okay. The imposter syndrome, imposter means that you feel this is something you actually do very well, but you are feeling like an imposter. They call you, okay, one example, the first time I had to teach an MBA class in Lagos Business School, I also taught the advanced management program. Now, you had CEOs of top businesses that I won't mention here who were there. CEOs of top businesses you hear about, big company, big boss. You see even the way they dressed. And then you look at the way you yourself are, you look at their suit, you look at the one you're wearing. And then what now came to me, these people, they say, you don't have an MBA and you are coming to teach an MBA, you're an imposter. That's a syndrome. That syndrome, that thing that comes to tell you are not enough. You are not enough. You're not able. You shouldn't be doing this. Why is it you standing and talking to these people? On what authority, on what basis? You are not enough. That's imposter syndrome. And it happens to virtually anybody who is who, including the people you hear their big names today in the industry. Is that clear? That's imposter syndrome. That feeling, that thing, that voice that comes to tell you, who are you to be doing this? Who do you think you are to be able to do this? You're coming to teach MBA, yet you yourself, you don't have an MBA. So that's why it's called imposter syndrome. So that thing, that little voice in your head is telling you, imposter, you shouldn't do it. And meanwhile,
okay, like a reverend father teaching on marriage.
Like a what?
Reverend father teaching on marriage. That's okay. Thank you.
Yes, that reverend father might be very good. I'm knowledgeable because he's been dealing with human beings and dealing with marriages and counseling. So over years, he may have gathered some knowledge that he'll be able to do that. But the imposter syndrome is within himself. Yeah, he'll be saying, I'm not even married and I'm talking to married people. Okay. All right, Mayowa. Thank you, Ngozi.
All right, sir. Good evening and thanks for all you do. Actually, I think what you were just talking about now about the imposter syndrome, it's kind of, for example, in the next 10 years, I see myself as someone having a net worth of $10 million, and I plan to go into real estate. But I was thinking of going into there's a forex. I did some little trainings and here and then, but I didn't really like the issue you mentioned while I just started to book on stocks. The knowledge was not so much, so I felt this was a bit tough. And people around me is like virtually, I didn't really see anybody around that is really talking about anything stocks. And it's just something, I think my father, my Blessed Mary, I think there was one time talked about, I saw some envelopes of dividends, and it was a long time ago. So it's something I didn't really think much about. So following you on LinkedIn, just stumbled on one of your posts one time where you were doing your exercise, and just something just clicked, and I decided to start following and had the opportunity of joining this masterclass. It has really brought to light so many things that I have in mind.
Okay.
And for example, I plan more or less. I have this interest with children. So, and I've seen quite a lot of children who are had the potentials, but their parents are poor or they couldn't really do much. So, I was thinking of, okay, if I could get like a school that will be well set up. These are one of my goals, where not just about having motherless babies home, but something that would educate them to make them better in the future, and having the resources to, go by this. So these are one of my goals. Let me put it that. Though, just like initially, when I deliberately doing some research, I deliberately wanted to measure things in dollars, but so it's kind of scary sometimes for me. It's like, how would I, go about something like this? But with even what you just said, immediately you said about how do I see myself in the next 10 years, I was kind of, wow.
Right.
The kind of, basically, I have time on my hand now because I'm working remotely. So I usually love reading books. I do that a lot, but of recent, it's kind of like just didn't really have, should I say it, didn't have much. I was moving towards watching movies. And not the should I say, not the ones that would benefit, like one that I started watching about the men who built America.
Very good.
So that's I put down my interest in watching film into things. I'm trying to channel that into that at the moment now. So
here's what we're gonna do, Mayowa. The first step is actually to have a personal growth plan, all right? And you're going to create it, because one way to take advantage of resources, there are so many resources, and I'm still going to point you to books. I can make a book recommendation in the chat, in the group chat, within the week in answer to your. But the first thing is actually creating your own personal growth plan. So between now and the 10 years that you are worth, you have a net worth of $10 million, and then you are involved in real estate. So between now and then, question one, what skills are you going to need? Actually, the very first step is to develop your mission, a mission statement, because your personal mission statement will be the organizing element of everything else you do. Every single thing I post on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, everywhere, every single action I take, I've trained myself over the years to have everything revolve around my mission. Because the most important thing for every one of us here is to live on target. And then every day I'm asking myself, this thing I'm doing now, is it mission critical? If it's not aligned, it might be good, but that's it. No, I'm going. Okay. So somebody comes to me like they did a couple of, was it like a year or two ago? People were pressing on me to do some Forex thing. And of course, you've already read my book, and one of those chapters I actually talked about all those things like Forex. I had to, as at that time, that was 2007. I wrote that book in 2008. But I had heard so much about Forex trading and all that. But I wanted to hear from the source. And then some guy came from Abuja at that time, people were making more money doing training than actually trading. And this guy came, and I remember 2007 or 2008, and I paid this guy, I cannot forget, 85,000 naira. And then he came to my office in Marina, and all he did was go to the internet at that time, downloaded something, printed. It was useless. I just wasted that money. So after things like that, I decided, okay, let me go straight to. So that year they were having Forex Expo in New York. And this is where all the dealers and all the dealing houses and all the whatever, they were all coming together in that place. So I flew to New York myself, and I attended that thing every day, made contacts. And I remember becoming, I went to CMS Forex. They were in 64th floor of the Empire State Building, signed some documents with them to become their representative here. in such that every pip in this place, I will get a fraction of every pip, every sale that people make, and the pips rise and people cash in and all that. So I was deep into that thing. But you see, I came out, I looked at my overall mission. I looked at Forex, trading Forex, excellent. But what I quickly discovered was the only way you can make it in Forex is number one. That's my own conclusion. It might not be true for everybody. It's number one, you must already have had money. You are comfortable, you have money, and you just have something to play. You know, I was in a program with and I was on the high table with Leo Stan Eke. I don't know how many of you know him. Leo Stan Eke. Leo was, I don't know if he still is, was extremely wealthy. I think he was the guy that started the Xerox computers. So we were sitting by the side, and there was something he said about, you know, he just wakes up and then he throws $500,000. That was then in the Forex and things like that. So there are people who play at that level, because you see, there are people, if they lose $1 million, it doesn't scratch them. But this your small 5 million naira that you have gathered over the past 10 years, and then you change it to dollars, it becomes like $5,000. You do one trade, and within 1 hour, that thing is gone. You're finished. That was my conclusion. And then number two, I found out that you cannot do that thing and do other things and do like your regular job. That was my conclusion then. And I'm not saying it's going to be the same, you know, for everybody. So what you need to do, therefore, is define your mission. Your mission is, what are you here for? What are you here? What are you here to do? What are you here for? What's the meaning of your life? Who were you sent to serve? Mission usually has three things. Like if we're doing missions, if you are doing your mission workshop for your company, mission has three things: who you serve, what you do, and then the outcome you create. And then we can mimic the same thing in our personal lives if we are creating our personal mission statement. And so maybe if all of us here are interested, we can do that next Saturday, and then I can lead you through how do you create your personal mission statement, and I can give you the formula to do that. So do that first. Then number two, after you've created your mission statement, you now ask yourself, from here to that $10 million net worth, what is involved? What skills? What knowledge? So we call it the frame. We call it cash, KASH. Okay, so that's what you use for your personal development. So the K stands for knowledge. So what knowledge do I need to accumulate? Do I need to acquire to take me from here, where I am, to that $10 million net worth in the next 5 to 10 years? Then the A stands for attitudes. I'm basically talking about the character. All right. What attitudes will take me there? Are you going to get there if you're a proud person? Are you going to get there if you are not an agreeable person, so always quarreling with people? Are you going to get there? So what attitudes will take me there? And then S stands for skills. What skills will I need to build? Because your skill will become the ladder to take you from where you are to that place. And then the fourth one, what habits do I need to cultivate? Now, it's after you answer this cash question, KASH, that you'll begin to see what books fall in, what conferences I need to attend, what seminars, what workshops I need to attend, and all those things. All those things will fall into place. And that's actually because the internet is filled with so many resources. Like when we talk about resources, they're all over the place. Okay, so and when we do that, I can actually tell you, there's a place, an internet archive, where you can find books written in the 17th century, 18th century, 19th century. And that's where sometimes I go to find my materials. People are reading modern books, but sometimes I go find books written in 1830 something. I find books written in the early 1900s, in the late 1800s. And my goodness, and it's available there. You know, most of them are available there for free. So I can show you all those things. But the most important thing, first of all, is to do this exercise, create your mission, Then go through the KASH system and then identify what knowledge do I need to acquire, what attitudes, what skills, and what habits. Then that will now show you the books you're going to read, the coach you're going to hire, the seminars you will attend, and all these other things, the people you will belong to their mastermind. I hope that's helpful, Maiwa.
Wow, thank you so much, sir. It's so comprehensive. I really appreciate this, sir. Thanks so much, sir.
My pleasure. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think this is where we're going to bring it to a landing today. And as our culture is, please could you type in the chat, what was an aha moment for you today? The aha moment is usually like, what is it that it was a light bulb moment, for you, your eyes, just opened and it kind of made your day. So please type it in the chat. It usually helps us a lot. What was your aha moment? What did you hear today? Okay, Cash. Okay, good. Don't get used to the business. Yes, but to the customer. Fantastic. True. Yeah. Don't get attached to the business. Yeah. Become attached to the customer. Okay. Imposter syndrome. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Re-engineering mindset is critical. Absolutely. Okay. Okay. Innocent also has imposter syndrome as the aha moment. Okay, very good. Okay. Imposter syndrome again. Very good. Yeah. It is a big challenge with many of us as leaders. And we can, one of the Saturdays, we can talk about dealing with that imposter syndrome. Yep. Personal mission statement. Very good. Very good. So everybody look at the chart. Yeah. See what others are there. Okay. One more. One more. And then while we are doing that, just to remind all of us, please find something, just one thing you are going to, one little action you're going to take, even if that action is to share with a family member or to share with your colleagues at work, whatever that action is, just by all means, please make sure you take one action, because that's what we're going to talk about when we come. Yeah, IJ, yes. How do I manage the unthinkable? Very good. Okay. SS says cash, imposter syndrome, and then personal mission statement. Excellent. All right. So we're going to take it from there next week. Whatever happens, ladies and gentlemen, keep showing up. Yeah, because what lies ahead, I can guarantee you, is much better. God is a good God, and his plan is always very, very good, for us. He doesn't harm us. He plans good for us. And I'll see you again next Saturday. Thank you all very much. And then you have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, sir.
Thank you very much.